All right, everybody. We got a pretty good one today, don't we? That's right. It's the weekly Dagger. And you're with BisuDagger himself, the Africa Star League Season 2 caster, my co-caster Flash for the win. Of course, you can listen to me and him cast Best versus C this Sunday. And then, following up with that, you can watch us both cast Flash versus J-Dog. That's right. Reality is coming true here. Finally, the fantasy that we've all been waiting for. Flash versus J-Dog. It is back. It is hype. I can't wait to be able to see those two. I mean, let's think about it for a moment here. J-Dog is behind in the medal count. He needs to actually get more first places to really put himself up on that greater echelon again. But people are saying right now that Flash, as great as he looks, is nowhere near where he was back in the Kespa era. So that's something that we've really got to keep an eye on. Look closely at where is Flash actually lagging behind from where he was in the Kespa days. Because to me, the competition looks really good. To you guys, the competition looks really good. I mean, these players still play at such high caliber games. I thought the round of 16 was really impressive. The round of 24 was really impressive too. But I think where we started to see players separate each other and not look so good was in the round of 8. We were seeing Bisu, who even admitted that he was actually just sort of half-assing things when he was practicing, and it paid off for C, who actually put in the effort and dominated. Hero is a player that just got outplayed, just literally outplayed by Best. But then we get down to Gwimchi. Gwimchi tried really hard again, but Flash is on another tier. He played at another level, and unfortunately, those two players just don't compare. And when we finally got to J-Dog and Stork, like Bisu admitted, well, he hasn't actually quite practiced hard enough to deserve the spot that he was in, and J-Dog gave him an easy 3-0. And so J-Dog looked good in that series. He played some great mind games, as you could read in the interviews too on Team Liquid if you wanted to, about how every game he picked his build perfectly knowing who his opponent was. But when it comes to J-Dog versus Flash, then we've got a different dynamic. Because Flash is probably the most difficult player to read. You cannot determine what he's going to do because he executes every build order really well. And so he's the one who can be aggressive and pick and choose. So this is where it kind of leads to what I'm thinking today, is where I want to base my cast. Is I want to actually give first-person views. Let's look through the eyes of players and try and understand how they're going to react to another player. Because sometimes when I'm playing StarCraft, and I don't know if you feel this way, and sometimes when I'm actually just sitting around and thinking about StarCraft, one of the major issues I have is how do I force the player into my game plan? You know, so let's say I want to open up with a particular build, but my build order doesn't counter or play very well with the build order that, let's say, the Terran opponent went, because obviously I play Protoss more often than anything else. And so they go 2-fact. Well, 2-fact is actually going to force me to hunker down, get more gateways, build a lot more units earlier on, and in that sense, I have to start thinking really intelligently about where did I want to go from here. Am I able to continue my tech? Am I able to continue to get a third base and work towards arbiters and play for the late game? That's a lot of the mentality that we have to start working on now, is analyzing these players, seeing it from their view at the highest level, these Korean pros, and breaking down their timings, their decisions. Did they go for buildings? Did they go for expansions? Are they continuing with upgrades? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do first-person view. I'm going to do the first-person view where I only watch a replay with half of the map lighted up. It's only going to be the view of light in this particular replay. And then we're going to watch first-person replays on YouTube of more recent games too. Not that this one isn't recent, but I do want like super recent, really well recommended replays also. So we're going to go to YouTube for that because I'm running a little bit low in my stores of replays myself. So let's go ahead and start digging into this. I don't have a good agenda for today. I just kind of have an idea and a concept of where I want this cast to go. So bear with me, and I would love any involvement. And I'm going to have to remember to continue to say this as people do start to come in here. But I do want involvement in this. I want you guys to, if you identify something that I maybe not pick up. What I've been practicing really hard though, in my spare time, is I've been watching replays, and I'm trying to really focus on mini-map vision. And for those of you who don't work on that, it's really important that you keep an eye on the mini-map, but also manage what's going on in the real game. Now, whether you're playing the game or watching a replay, this can be a really hard skill to develop. It's a very technical one, which is why you have players that actually make careers out of just being, replay viewers. They follow the camera around. And you can actually tell when you have someone who's not as good at controlling the camera during a live match versus someone who is a novice. It really is a big difference. So let's go to weekly 16 here. Let me go ahead and switch over to seed 1. Everything should be set up over here. I'm not really gonna just set up the players here. This is not like a legit best of 1. Actually, people are gonna come in and they're gonna ask who's playing. So maybe I will. Real quick, let me just add that we're gonna have the Terran player light, and then we will also have the Protoss player minus Candy. Minus is the clan name, obviously, and then Candy, I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with this person, but it really doesn't matter, scrub or not. These players are playing against each other, and we're going to gather some information from it. Ain't that right? Let's see. Set that active there. Okay, cool. Excuse me. I'm gonna have to get my water later too. Who on earth? Yes, who on earth is playing? Oh, thank you, proving my point already. So we have a light versus Candy that you're gonna see right here between these two players here are gonna be on Fighting Spirit right away. And of course, if you're not familiar with the map, it's always really important to load maps up, give them an overall view, understand where all the bases are, and maybe before you even play a game, just give yourself, excuse me here, I apparently got my face attacked, kind of like similar to a flash experience, like an eye twitch sort of thing. Yes, I do have eyes behind here, believe me. So, yeah, the last thing that I wanted to do is remove Candy from view. Bye-bye. Okay, cool. So this is all we have. And you gotta know that Light doesn't even know where his opponent is. It's a 4-player map. We don't know where his opponent is. Forget where we saw that at the beginning of the map. Well, let's just continue to focus here and try to nitpick at everything that we can possibly think of. And we can maybe just speed this up just a tiny bit until the first supply depot comes out. And so the first thing that we note is that because this is right half of the map spawn, supply depot down at the bottom, Light has a preference to pop the SCVs out in this little nook area here, which is why the building is just brushed up against the command center. So that's the first little strategic move that we're going to see out of our Terran player as he continues. Okay, so we've reached 10-10 here, and that allows you at exactly that 10-10 mark, especially if you've been rallying your SCVs very effectively, spreading them out across the mineral line. You've got your 150 minerals, and at 10-10 you can drop down this barracks right away. So now we've actually reached our first interesting tidbit. It's, are we going to see the player just continue off this barracks and try and get a really fast greedy expansion with the RAS expand? But more commonly, you see the refinery, and I think that there was a shift, because like 2 years ago, it was all about the RAS expand. It really was. But now we're actually seeing the refinery that's going to be coming up first. And the follow-up is two ideas that you can, you're going to automatically mine with 3 SCVs. Let's keep this going here. You're going to automatically mine with 3 SCVs, unless you're doing something super quirky. And then you're going to pull SCVs if you're going for the fake double. And really the idea is here, the Protoss is going to have to, if they scout you early, they're not going to know right away unless they can see the SCVs mining. But you're going to have Marines out to kill off that scout. But it really opens up the option. Do you want to drop down a second factory and be really aggressive? Or do you want to get that next command center and expand off that one factory? And so we're going to see here what Light decides, of course, very shortly. No scout quite yet either. Because the Terran player wants to always utilize that one SCV that has been given the directive of, you are no longer going to be a mining SCV. You're going to build the supply depot, build the barracks, and immediately after start sending this SCV out to look and see if there was anything cheesy. You know, check some maybe important critical points on the map over here where there could be a double gateway, kind of a 2-gate aggression here. and kind of a poking around with this SCV. Light saying, well, I didn't see anything in just the edge across this bridge. I'm going to assume that there is no Protoss over there, and this factory is going to continue also. I guess one thing that we needed to note here, and I'm sorry because I was focusing on the scout here, is that there is an SCV that appears to have been pulled, because you can see that there's not an SCV popping out as that one goes in. So this is going to be that fake double style build. It allows more minerals to come out. A follow-up with the supply depot here, and still inside this base, another supply depot. So up to 3 supply depots, because why? Well, you're crushing out all these Marines here. And you're going to be preparing also to get either a siege tank first, which can make you really, really protective. Or it depends. Again, light style could be go for mine or speed on vultures to have vultures out. So down here, remember, mini-map awareness is very important. And you can only have this SCV alive for so long if there happens to be a Dragoon out. But right now it's a Zealot chase, so you can at least keep that SCV alive for a little bit. We need to pause because right now decision making, a 101 has to occur right now. What is Light going to do now that he has actually viewed this Protoss base? So what would we do? Also, there are 2 gateways that are already down. We see that range is already on the way. There is a nexus at the natural base. And right here, another pylon coming up. Of course, if the SCV comes down here, we may see more tech, but really, will we? That's kind of a big question. The SCV hasn't gone that far. But right now, we're just saying, okay, this looks very standard from a Protoss player. So any sort of build order that you want to open with right now as a Terran player is still pretty safe. So behind this, Light is not going to change anything. He did go for Spider-Mine research, but he went for a tank first, because tanks are just really safe. You want to get that first tank out, especially if you want to follow this up with an expansion, because that tank on the high ground in this cliff area allows you to get the range to defend at this cliff area. At this point, Light wasn't sure if there was going to be an early goon or 2 out. So definitely getting that tank is a nice option. So let's go ahead and see what this SCV does end up seeing as it does continue to stay alive here. I like that the Marines pushed out. They're trying to play kind of a bait and switch on this probe to pick it off. But it looks like Candy is going to be really active too. So we're seeing at the 4-minute mark. The 4-minute mark in about, let's say, 15 seconds here. Oh, no, a little bit more. Up to... Oh! I thought a command center was going to go down, but resources were just spent. So instead of a command center going down, Light has decided that he's actually going to delay that command center even further to get a vulture out first, because he did get the mine upgrades, and putting those mines out pretty early on could be beneficial for him, especially since he's not just trying to sit back and be really passive and have a 1 take with siege inside of his base. So right now we're going to have to watch again as the mineral count does get higher and reaches towards that 400. What is Light doing also here? We're seeing that the barracks is moving out to just kind of clog up this area. It creates a nice pseudo wall for the Terran player, so it's not so easy for Protoss to get inside. And 2 vultures are going to be out in just a minute here. As you can see that a second vulture has been queued up here, and it's going to be really important. So without any vision of the map, this is why Light is putting these mines right here. He's actually laying these mines out 1, 2, and sometimes you'll even see the first the spider mine right here, because there's this alleyway that DTs could kind of loop their way around. Light is very skeptical at this point, and so are we, that this base, the way it's looking, was going to end up being a DT style build. But still, without having another scout, he's got to lay these spider mines out safely at home to hope that he catches a DT that would be walking in that path off guard. Now, there's no detection, like I said, no concept station, no academy, no engineering bay, but I imagine that an engineering bay would be coming soon as the next building of choice. 3 spider mines right here. I really, you see it so much more often, a spider mine here, but Light, he's a very intelligent player. He knows what he's doing. So there's no more spider mines on this vulture, but this vulture can be annoying and try and come in here and pick off this probe, knowing that there's this third base expansion that Protoss is really going to want. So what he did here is delay that Nexus even further and force Protoss to respawn. Meanwhile, okay, Light's got his next step of information here. 4 Dragoons are out. And let's do a base check. He's dropping down that second factory behind this, which may not get a machine shop right away, allow him to get vultures to help in here. And his second tank is coming down here too. And this is where you can see, you know, 2 vultures, 2 tanks, and 4 to 6 marines. And this is why I say 4 to 6. We actually see 5 right here. Apply some pressure against the Protoss player. But instead, Candy's actually moving out. He's being aggressive. And so Light's going to have to be very aware of that. Where are his spider mines? They're not very favorable right now because he's already laid them off back at home. So he did nothing to really keep Protoss in here. But this is nice. We are seeing a vulture that is getting up inside this base. It's not going for a scout first. It actually went for, you know, just going for those quick probe worker kills. You can see down here at the third base, it still hasn't been taken yet. Light's keeping the tabs on that too. Oh, this is a little bit of a struggle here. Light didn't actually pull his SCVs to repair on that tank quick enough. These Dragoons got in here pretty quickly. But this second tank follow-up is going to make everything all right. That was a nice spider mine also that got really lucky for Light. So Light is down 1 tank. But he's traded it for, I believe, 1 Zealot got killed off earlier and 2 Dragoons. And that's all right. He actually did all of that without sieging up his tanks either. And so that's important to note too. He did a pretty adequate defense without being in siege mode. At this point, 30 SCVs. You want to at least get up to 40 SCVs off these 2 bases. And then as you start to go for your third, you get that count up to 45 and just continue to let it grow here. These Dragoons are being extraordinarily risky here, trying to pull in the spider mine. But the problem is that Light is realizing, you know, as long as Candy continues to awkwardly commit in here and lose this Dragoon count, it's really just only going to strengthen his army even further. Right now, we see that speed is going to be on the way. I believe that siege mode has to be done at this point. It's got to be done, right? Or I tried to be aware here, but we don't see any of these tanks in siege mode, and that's one of the huge problems here. He opted for that factory over the siege mode upgrade, and if he just had that 1 tank, you know, positioned behind everything in siege, then he would have been safe from everything. Well, we don't want to click on Protoss because that would give away too much information for this cast, wouldn't it? This Dragoon here, obviously, just going to be a useless unit down at the south here. So several tanks were lost. The tank count is only at 2. But the worker count hasn't been affected. So I'd say the Terran game plan is going to continue here. And what I would assume, and we're going to see shortly here from Light, is that he'll try and get up to at least 5 factories off these 2 bases. And as you see, the worker count up to 35, close to that perfect amount. You know, these supply depots here caused an issue with this 1 single SCV. It's finished mining, but now you can't tell that it's finished building this supply depot, but you can't actually tell that it isn't mining. And so this is one of the things that I disagree with, you know, putting a supply depot here unless you actually do the extra Q to shift click your SCV over to the mineral line. Okay, so it actually is going to be seen here eventually by Light. I've seen other Terran players though where they just lose track of that worker here, and you want to make sure, obviously, you see another one down here. You want to make sure you're optimal because you want every worker to be mining. The academy is done, which is going to be a good follow-up for Constat stations. The minute is 8:15, and because of that huge siege of Dragoons, you know that there's not going to be a shuttle follow-up, really. So one of your more important things is to get scanned out so you can scan the important portions of the map. So before this engagement happens, we're going to do unit count. But really, once you get scanned out, this is an important area because you usually are going to see and confirm the Stargate pylon over there, maybe the robotics facility. Right now, can we determine whether the observer is out yet? No, we don't see an observer quite yet out at the front, but you know that Protoss is prioritizing it because, well, you know, Vulture's research mines so early here. So this is kind of a weird timing that Light has going on here. I'm missing a heinous beard. All right, time to work on that beard. My wife would hate me extremely if I got a beard though. She's one of the people that doesn't like the itchiness and the in-between process of getting a beard. So right now, 9 vultures are coming in here and only 2 siege tanks. I'm going to count these Marines as pretty inadequate here. It's not like they're going to be doing too much. This is a repair SUV that's going to be coming here. Unless for some reason it decides that it's going to bunker up, but it's not. It's not. So really, it's about these vultures and the spider mines that they're going to lay down that could really determine how this portion of the game is going to go. Oh man, if I had one of those vulture bikes, I'd feel so cool. Okay, so the vultures are pushing in here, and this has to be like a Bisu level micro here coming down with these spider mines. You see 3 dragoons already out, and this is what I was worried about. This shuttle, because the robotics facility had to be respawned with the observatory here too. A shuttle is definitely something that can come into play here, and Candy does a good job of dropping a zealot within range of these siege tanks here. And how many factories do we have? We have 3 factories, and they're pumping out 2 vultures at a time and 1 tank. Meanwhile, the SCV count, I would say, at the 9-minute mark right now, as you can see right here, the 9-minute mark is actually relatively low. Light opted for no gas here either in order for aggression, but we don't know. The engineering bay also coming in here too. I guess another way to spend some minerals, but the constant vulture production is helping that out. We don't know if there's a 3rd base here. So Light's being really risky by taking a late gas and not being able to fuel a factory plus add-on type economy here. You know, we're only working off 1 machine shop. Very impressive, or risky, I guess you could say. But we've seen attacks like this from C, who is also one of the ASL players in the semifinals right here. And this siege area can actually brutally hit these buildings right over the cliff if you have vision. So this is Reaver. So this is a Reaver. That Reaver doesn't have a scared that comes off here. The Spider-Mine's still trying to help at the front here too. Siege mode isn't going to help out right now. So all these units are just going to be in limbo again. But I think this Reaver really throws a wrench into Light's play because he wasn't really expecting that. And he didn't scan with it at all either. Remember, these scans exist here, but we're still operating on very little information from you know, the Terran's point of view. And so Light, I would say, in regards right here, is actually playing a relatively bad game. He's down to 3 siege tanks, 4 vultures. You know that at this point. It's just instinct that Protoss right now has at least 3 or more gateways. So they are really outproducing the Terran units. Light has to travel across this entire map to reinforce this pseudo push that it has. This barracks is in danger of getting taken out also once these units get pushed back. So Light's in a lot of really bad positions here in many different ways. So he's got to keep an eye out. He's trying to build up turrets maybe out on the map here. To what you can do as a turret trick is build your turret and float your building on top of it. Oh, we see an observer that's coming across the map here, so it has vision. But if you put the barracks on top of the turret, you can't actually single target that turret. And so it's one of those clever moves that you have that allows you to help snipe off that shuttle. But still, with the Zealot bombs alone and this Reaver following behind it, this is a really good play for Candy, and Light continues to be in such a bad position. Only 44 SCVs at the 10-minute mark. I mean, there is no follow-up game plan for Light. I think that he's just playing this super poorly at this point, and we might be seeing the person that we're watching for the first-person view end up losing this game. The armory on the way though, another factory, I guess because he really knows that he needs to crunch on that production. Oh, here we go. So we actually finally have information here as the vultures were over here. They actually ended up poking up. You can see that the vision here is of this Nexus. Now, a block here on the ramp, so the vultures aren't going to get in. Of course, they can be pesky and continue to attack at it. But it's 3 base to 2 base, and I would say that's probably for a considerable amount of time based on the infrastructure that's built up there. I know there's a lot of assumptions here, but Light has to operate on that because he's really not using the scans to his advantage again, or I think that he should. And here comes our wonderful EE bag coming out here. Oh, hold on. I accidentally clicked something terribly off my screen. Let's get away from here. Leadabot also says the games of the Star Apple Man vs. Machine should be played late January, early February. Awesome. I appreciate you sending me those replays. I will get to those as timely as I can. Let me lock in my cursor here. That would actually help things out. So behind this, Light actually isn't paying attention well, because this is the crappiest Reaver ever, because it's been here for this long, yet it still hasn't done that much damage. Do you see how many few SEVs it killed off for a single tank response here coming up to try and help it out? So that alone just cracks me up. Alright, another command center has been built. The command center could be floated over here and stay pretty safely. When are we actually going to see siege tanks and proper siege mode, posting up against this army? I guess there was one here that defends from the south side. I mean, this Reaver's just one hit away from being dead. Too much focus on this, right? Okay, so four factories, a few Goliaths, I guess, popping out to kind of help against this shuttle play. The army researching +1 attack. But this is, again, it's such a late refinery that I think that Candy has put himself in a pretty good position. And because of that, the vulture count always has to be super high, because that's the only place that you can really pump in your minerals into a lot of units. And you do have to kind of match some certain amount of army, and there's just this lingering feeling that there's a lot of Protoss just sitting outside here, waiting to pick off the vultures as they push out. The Spider-Mine field is really weak here too. I hate to see that there's 10 vultures here with a lot of Spider-Mines queued up. You can see 1, 2, a couple of them had 3 here, and they need to get out into this area and start laying it down, because now the Protoss, it actually has vision of the high ground, especially with this observer here. There's no turret in place, and without Spider-Mines on this low ground to slow down this push, they're not properly placed out on the high ground either. It's such a huge risk, and I think that Candy could have actually done a lot more damage. And Light, yeah, here comes Speed Zealots coming in here now too. So a lot of siege tanks posting up at this third base, but Dragoons are actually getting up here with relative ease. This is really good micro and unit control by Candy to get the units up inside of here, and Light continues to be in a really, really bad position. There's really no coming back from this, because he needed to have this third base. Having this extra gas is so integral at this point. Protoss can easily expand behind this. The tank count has been completely obliterated again. He has 7 tanks, but you saw 5 of them just went down inside of this third base already. And there's complete control over this extra expansion area. Light, though, he's about to complete with his +1 attack. There's the follow-up here too with this science facility, I'm sure, so that way he can start going towards that +2 attack. Still very factory light. Here's the science facility. And only 4 factories is just incredibly difficult to play with at this point in the game, knowing that, oh, look at this. We heard the concept scans go down, and there is an additional expansion over here. Oh, look at this, though. All the probes, nom it up here. And some nice kills by those vultures, but again, the expansions are just getting out of control. So from here, Light has to play into the 1-2 game. He can't do anything else but focus on securing this third base, making sure that he adds in the +1 armor upgrade, and once he gets to 1-2, then he just has to wait until he maxes out to 200-200. So if Candy decides to play it passive, Light gets back into this game. It's a brutal thing for a Protoss player, and completely unfair. But yeah, if you give your opponent the time, he will bounce back. Almost up to 60 SCVs, so that's a pretty good worker count at least. Imagine that this refinery is going to be taken just shortly after. Yep. And it's going to be added in here. And now we're seeing that Light is putting himself into a pretty good spot. Okay, maybe he killed off that probe. I thought there was a glimmer of white. Meanwhile, he's bringing some vultures down here too, trying to harass with what he can. And the vulture count is really only at 9. I'd say it's pretty low, but he did have to burn a lot of vultures in trying to defend this one particular location here. With these extra turrets, this is all about Arbiter defense here. And almost 2 Arbiters isn't enough. And I mean, not 2 Arbiters, 2 turrets isn't enough. Because we saw that exclude the Mon game where hallucinations actually came in, but we've seen time and time again where we're just being short 1 additional turret, maybe like right at this location here. You could actually build it even further up if you wanted to. The 3 turrets is almost that sweet spot, and then this one in the back to finish the Arbiter off before recall happens. But you're weak to it, but if you plan it out right, you fill in the holes with Vulture, with Spider Mines, then you'll be alright. A nice little pylon block here, and a response from Candy again to knock that out. So this is the rubble here, these pebbles, really important that you kind of build in the spaces here with infrastructure and expand your siege tanks out. So the command center is floating over, and Light knows that he actually has to expand pretty aggressively. It sucks that that Protoss did see the command center though, because it will show the Protoss, hey, I need to start being aggressive, and so Light's gonna have to prepare for that. And this is really good. His mine placement is really a top notch over here. And it creates a perfect wall, and it's really hard for just a bunch of zealots to just race their way through, even with speed, to get to these tanks. These 3 siege tanks will do a considerable amount of damage, but it's important also to always cover the area around the bridge, and then of course have 2 tanks on the high ground along with some spider mines to cover this 3rd base. The rest of it you can pretty much recover to pretty quickly. But here comes the initial Arbiter play, and actually, the Zealots got through so much more easily than expected. So those were very favorable Spider Mine explosions for those Zealots. Behind this, though, you can see that the Arbiter, with energy, is coming across without any turrets. Some scans are going to have to go down. There is a science vessel, but the science vessel, I believe, was somewhere over here. Alright, it did get brought over to this right side army. Not enough infrastructure was built over here. So while 3 tanks were here, a few more tanks needed to be reserved to kind of defend that area. Oh, look at that glitched Vulture. Actually, I have to hit the stop key on that Vulture to prevent it from continuing to dance on the cliff there, completely stuck forever. Even if you give it like an A command, it's not going to move, and it's actually blocking these Vultures from getting out. Oh, thank you so much, Brood War, for creating such a frustrating movement for units. Okay, so +2 is about to finish, and I actually think that +2 attack, really, +2 attack is finishing up quicker. I'm sorry, not +2 attack, +2, I got that backwards. I'm sorry, forgive me. +2 attack is what you want. I had them switched in my mind. I can't identify portraits very effectively. The +2 armor is lagging behind, which is fine. This is absolutely okay. I don't want to tell you guys the wrong information here. So again, the tank count is 16. That's low. Actually, you want to have about 24 tanks to feel good across the 4 bases that you have at this point in the game. 16 is a little bit paltry, and the factory count is still really low. Only 2 machine shops. You really want to have 3, and in fact, if you're doing well at this point in the game, you can have closer to 8 to 10 factories at this stage. So really, I don't think that's the spatial layout of this main base has done well. It hasn't been optimized for more factories, but lifting the science facility, if Light can focus on adding, I know, don't freak out. I know that there's an invasion right here, but we're just kind of talking about little tidbits. It's not all about the fighting and the action. Is it? So really, he can drop in a couple more factories here, but most importantly now, because this Arbiter recall did come in here, the tanks got taken out, but that was that nice spider mine that I pointed out earlier. And now these siege tanks should be able to respawn within a reasonable time. You actually often see the SCVs pull, and if it's not so zealot heavy, that Dragoons will fail to do a lot of damage here. Now, these units can't escape unless they focus on these supply depots. So it's also really integral for Protoss players to just try and clear down these bottom buildings, because whether they want to open up a hole for more units to come in or run away with whatever units they have remaining from this attack, it's very important across the board. Now, tanks can come from the south, but it's always safer to try and secure this alleyway that goes between your natural and your third base here. And Light's just not doing a good job of moving any units out to defend these areas. But remember, he is working towards his 2-2 army. And as long as he can continue to keep units alive, he will start reaching towards that max army. But right now, he's heading towards the left. What's the reason? Well, he did happen to send a vulture over here and see some units, or see some buildings earlier. So he's going to try and break this area first. Because you would think for a Protoss player that would be relatively weaker. But oh my god. Well, remember how I said this game was over? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6... and then a 7th base that's starting to warp in. It's already got cannons. 2 gateways up here. Now imagine the amount of gateways between just the bottom right and the bottom left. Light is in a lot of trouble as Candy is continuing to play a phenomenal PvT. These cannons do go down relatively easily though. And we don't know. We can't confirm if there's a nexus behind this. But another recall has actually occurred inside this base. So as much as Light is trying to start to take down bases, again, he's going to be in a lot of trouble. +3 could get taken out. The +2 armor upgrade could get taken out. Actually, one of the nice areas of focus here, if he can't get right over to the factories. So this was a very effective recall, I think, for Candy here. Look at this. No SCVs over here. The burning damage. The burning damage. Is he going to get it? He may need to bring one of those gas mining SCVs over. That's the closest chance that he has to actually keep it alive. But it's gonna go down. The sad fate here. So this Nexus, no mining. It's gonna get taken out. Alright. Maybe that's just more room for factories like I was trying to harp on earlier. So now it's this next area that he has to push towards here. Because you gotta start working your way towards each base. It's less about these vultures and more about, you know, just trying to meat shield these tanks so the tanks can stay alive. And somehow Light, you know, he has a decent amount of map control, despite the fact that the macro should be ridiculously high for the Protoss player right now. Oh, here it comes again. I think this is the death blow with this final Arbiter. Look at that recall. Not a lot of Zealots, though. I mean, it'll allow the Dragoons, if they can stay alive long enough, to kill off most of these tanks within range. But that was really bad. Wow. And we're seeing continually that these units are just getting killed off. Meanwhile, a large army heading towards the south here. So that was well defended, right? Or poorly executed by Candy, who needed to be more Zealot heavy there. I love having a certain amount of Zealots and recalls. I think that Protoss players undervalue them and always go for too many Dragoons. No gas here, so no third gas, which is why the tank count will never be replenished at this point. We're looking at a point in the game where, okay, that's not depleted yet, but this is depleted. It doesn't even have optimal mining. There's an SCV that's stuck back here. Again, Light really failed with his infrastructure of this base. For as smart as he is as a player that gives a lot of instruction, he just really sucked it this time. And building his base infrastructure. So think about these stupid things like, oh, the SCV might pop out of the back, and now it's in trouble because it won't ever let go of that canister like some moron. And building a turret right next to a gateway. How fun. Man, sometimes I get worked up. These players are supposed to execute perfectly, right? Perfectly! Oh, look at that D-Matrix. That D-Matrix has just saved the shit out of that tank. Now the tank's up to 14 kills. But this is an area of importance for Candy. So Candy is going to bring the rest of his ground army here and just kind of flood the area, eliminating the rest of Light's army. So Light has focused on making sure he got these important upgrades. He does sit with 2-1. 137 supply spread out across the map. He's got a command center over here too. Again, he hasn't focused on gas, and for whatever reason, he's not pumping out vultures either. It's like this is the rest of his army here. Well, More units flood in here. I think there's a lot of focus that has been gone into this base location here and trying to engage in this battle. Meanwhile, oh, wow. Wow, that went through? That's the problem. That's the problem with building all of your turrets on the edge. Are you an ignoramus? Well, you know what? You need to build some a little bit back that start to, you know, throw the barrage of hits in too, so that the Arbiter doesn't get all the way inside. Of course, I think that the turrets that are on the edge could be a little bit closer to the edge here to also help prevent this from happening. And no spider mines. No spider mines. Well, you know, you had 1,000 minerals a second ago, so some more spider mines could come out, or vultures could come out here, and you could have prevented this recall from happening. But c'est la vie, right? It's all about these turrets, man. Protoss is really just trying to force an issue with the Arbiter recalls here, and eventually it will drive and starve out the opponent. Okay, so we're 24 minutes into the game. Let's just kind of speed it up and see if there's any glimmer of hope. Can you see this? There's a base here at the third base location. I think things are going to start to fall apart. Wow. Another Arbiter. Another Arbiter. More damage. God, this is a long game. I'm glad we're moving on. I was tired of this. If Light somehow wins that, if Light somehow had won that game, I would have been extremely disappointed in the Protoss race. But Candy, he does close it out. Alright, not much we can learn at that point. It's just him about fighting an uphill battle from there. So we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to close this. I need water before I go into the next game. But the next game is going to be Best versus sSak. So guys, hang out real quick as I get ready for the next game. Alright guys, you know, it's no wonder, let me go ahead and hit the play button here. It's no wonder why Best is the #1 Protoss player right now. He is playing phenomenal. Where he is in the ASL is pretty awesome too. Let me try and turn this volume down. I imagine that it's pretty loud compared to my voice here. And so here we are. We're with Best versus sSak. We're going to be watching a PvT. My hands are actually off the keyboard right now. And unless I feel like we're going to pause, we're just going to be kind of watching this together. And I know you can just obviously, you know, go to someone's stream. But no, it's going to be a little bit of commentary to this at least. A little bit more discussion. And so this was obviously also a highly recommended game. So I'm curious to see why it's highly recommended and what Best does and this PvT that makes this such a great game. So here we already see, and it's so fast. It's so fast when you watch it in this view instead of being able to pause and look around and observe with the replay everything that's going on right now. But of course, 2 pylons are down, a gateway is out. As we continue through this game, I wish there was actually a minute timer here too. I'm just gonna make a mental note on the side to myself where I think this game is at. Okay, and right now it seems like Best is very confident that he knows where his opponent is, and I believe this is Circuit Breaker. So this is a 4-player map. Alright, and he actually likes to play with this early gateway, the early zealot coming out of the gateway. And this is something that we saw from Gwemchi also. I thought actually that it put Gwemchi behind in some regards by going for that zealot first, and that he could have used those minerals better in the early game by working towards tech or getting a faster nexus. But you actually put your nexus 100 minerals behind by going for that first zealot. Now, coming out with the second zealot, had that first zealot been scouted, then then Best is in trouble, because now he's made this investment of 200 minerals into zealots, and if he can't even get up the ramp because Terran plays very reclusive and defensively, then oh, we can see it coming up here. Yep. So there is a nice defensive wall here. The SUV and the Marines on top of that ramp, so he's not going to be able to get his units inside. No! Oh, this says Circuit Breaker. This says Circuit Breaker, and don't look at the time, but this has got to be Benzene. This is not Circuit Breaker, and I was trying to figure out what was going on here, but at the bottom of the under the screen under the YouTube video it says Circuit Breaker. So this was just miscommented here. I wonder if there's a comment below that actually tries to correct the map thing too. But remember, so this is how he knows exactly where his opponent is. Otherwise, Best would have never gone blindly for 2 fast zealots. But because he knows that where sSak is exactly positioned, it's no big deal. Okay, so now he's just kind of stuck with these useless zealots because he didn't get any damage out of them. And what was the point, in my opinion? I just don't think that 2 zealots early on ends up being fruitful. Building 1 is fine. You might be able to poke in and get something. But it's with that long distance, I just don't think it was a smart idea. He also could have saved that 100 minerals and gone for a goon early, and the goon would have actually dealt with this vulture much more effectively. I like that sSak is saying, well, okay, 2 zealots, yeah, this vulture can come out here and patrol micro around your units all day. No way it would take damage. Easier to patrol micro against zealots than it is against slow lings. So just keep that in mind. So the Nexus is down, additional probes going to be made, range upgrade going to come on the way for Best, and he's got to do additional things like put the scouting pylon out against the neutral temple. So that's going to be really important here. We've seen that Flash really abuses the ledges on Benzene. He puts tanks up there. He actually kills off the temple, mines there's no mineral patch. He kills off the temple and then gets vultures and tanks through and can attack both bases at the same time. Having this this pylon warped in, the pylon's not close enough. I don't think the pylon is close enough. This was a mistake by Best here, because you need to make the pylon close enough to be able to see the high ground adequately. But that vulture there is actually in such a sweet spot that it can't take damage until it gives damage. Because remember, you reveal yourself when you attack from the high ground and reveal that portion of the Fog of War. So right now, Best hasn't played the best opening. He hasn't set his pylon quite right. He built one more zealot than he needed to. But in terms of his base, his economy is okay. He's taken a little bit of hits on his probes up on the north side of that natural mineral line. But he's got the second gas. I'm assuming that's a robotics facility right there. If not, then what else is Best doing, right? This is where it sucks because we can't actually click in on that warping in building there. But a robo is going to be really important, especially since we see that vultures are out. Spider-Man follow-up would be logical here, and there we can see the robotics facilities finishing up. Oh, look at this! This is a super fast dropship here. And Best is going to have to micro against this. The vulture's getting up inside this, and this is why Benzene sucks when you're a Protoss player. because you have to deal with the abuse of this dropship play. And Zerg too. I mean, Benzene is just a very, very abusive map. Whoever takes advantage of it usually gets the upper hand. We can see that the vultures can split between the mineral line behind this. This is like Tayback Mountains. If you guys don't remember, Tayback Mountains before its patch actually had a very vulnerable main and natural base because of that backdoor area where units could kind of make their way and harass from. It's so nice not to have to put my hands on anything because I could just focus on maintaining my hydration throughout this little cast here. Guys, thank you for coming out on the Weekly Dagger. Of course, in a couple weeks, January 31st, Fight Club begins. TL.net sponsored. It will be on the official Team Liquid stream. I can't wait to have you guys there. The drawing for the players who are going to compete is going to happen in just 2 days, so we'll have those players announced very shortly. If you're interested in donating, please click on the stream link below and type in Fight Club and donate $5 or so. I think that there's someone who is actually planning on donating for an entire day, which will be $30 for a player reward. And if you want to donate towards bounties too, it's only $15 towards those bounties. So that can be very helpful. And we want to have 15 weeks of Fight Club. That's my stretch goal. 10 weeks completely funded out of my pocket. So just throwing that a little bit of advertisement for TL.net Fight Club here. Okay, so let's get our bearings back on straight. This dropship is just continuing to be a pain in the ass, isn't it? It's really important that your observers get put out in the right spot here, because if Terran's not being very acute with their vision, they may not always see the invisible observer. It can be pretty hard on this map tile set too. And if that's the case, then the Terran player may not know that you've already spotted the dropship and are planning to take it out. Look at this micro though, really trying hard to hunt it down, but it is going to make it away, and I am assuming that that's going to be the end of sSak's harassment with that single dropship, at least until it gets repaired. Notice it's been all Dragoons at this point, so best if anybody does it better, you know, you let me know. Does a great job of always dropping down a perfect amount of gateways, because it's important to continue to have the army unit flow, especially when you reach the point where you have a third base. So try and get up to at least 7 gateways off this 3 base play here on Benzene, because you want to have a significant significant advantage in terms of unit flow and production over the Terran player. So right now we're seeing a total of 8 gateways. So I was off by 1. Well, remember, always go by what Best does. So 8 gateways off 3 bases. A mineral only has been taken. Going to be important also, if Best can, to get greedy and try and take that 4th base at the top to try and get that gas, even though it's more vulnerable. The dropship here, one more time, it does get vultures in here, but I love that Best has goons back inside of his main base still. And he doesn't have a cluttered main base. All his gateways have been towards the ramp, and then he's left a lot of room in the middle area. So even if he does have to respond to the dropship, he can actually get his units over there pretty effectively. Now, here's the pressure that's going to be coming from the Terran player. It seems like the vultures are going to continue to maybe try and harass at the front. What we saw with Gwimchi versus Flash is Flash found a very nice timing to attack with a vulture gateway, vulture tank army on top of that 3rd base, and a timing that Gwimchi couldn't handle. But the production is so much higher in this game for Best than we saw than with Gwimchi, just because he wasn't able to lay down as many gateways in such a timely fashion here. So I would say that at this point, the struggle is needing more zealots. There's not a lot of zealots, but we did see, okay, you can actually see that he's queuing up a whole round of them. So this is completely on point. The zealots are going to be coming out as a follow-up. You need at least 1 control group. I would like to have 1.5 to 2 control groups of zealots. Have speed on them. +1 upgrade is a bonus 2 on the attack. And you can see with this next round, once speed kicks in, Best will want to engage. But he's actually, yeah, he got speed. Okay, so speed kicks in right now. Everything's been timed out really perfectly for Best. He's actually got goons that managed to make themselves available on the right side too. So swooping in from the south side, still, even though Best had to take in a lot of damage from those tanks. He is going to win this battle. He has taken no economical damage. He's got a ton of gateways that are built up, and he's stopped and squashed this push out that was coming from sSak. So really well played game there. Meanwhile, he's taken the very important 4th base on Benzene, because Benzene 4th base means gas base, and you need to have that gas to be able to transition into the Arbiter Gateway play. Otherwise, you're really only getting just enough gas to pump out the amount of Dragoons that Best has been doing from all those gateways, and then sparing the rest just enough for tanks. Alright, then let me add, I see that my webcam is behind us, so I'm going to move my webcam on top. Of course, I've just realized that no one wanted to see my face this entire time. Okay, so back on track. sSak, really, the only thing that he can do, and Best knows this, sSak can only expand from here. He doesn't have the army to just go out there and force the issue, because Best just played a really good fair exchange. And so what sSak is going to be doing is not only taking that bottom right base, he's going to be spreading himself to try and be 4 bases strong also. But he's going to be turreting up, because he wants to make sure that at home he is safe in case Shuttle gets snuck out, or that a potential Arbiter recall play, because he hasn't been confirmed whether Stasis or recall has been put forward first. Meanwhile, continuing a large amounts of gateways to be put down. Oh, sSak actually just calls GG here. Wow. Well, that was anticlimactic, wasn't it? Well, that's a picture. Alright. I'm disappointed with that game. It was recommended. Let's see. Let's see here, guys. I was gonna go with the Effort versus Movie game, but now I'm just skeptical it won't be that good. We need to have a Zerg though, right? We need to have a Zerg. Let's just go ahead and transition right into this. No slowing down. It's already 10:15, an hour into the cast. So let's keep it rolling. We're going to have a Zerg Effort, who has been knocked out of the ASL and only plays well on Fish apparently, who's going to be playing against Movie. The Movie's a pretty good ladder player. Don't discount him just because he's not your focal point of your favorite Protoss player. Man, Movie does not get enough love. That guy's freaking awesome, and he's been competing since the Sonic days. Oh my god, listening to Effort is just absolutely hilarious too. He makes tons of cute noises. I mean, this guy is a literal Asian bunny. But we'll just we'll bear with it, right? You can see his adorable face down at the bottom right. Unless I'm covering it up, I can't even see. Yeah, I'm covering Effort's face. It's actually half cut off here. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna go ahead and cut it off so it's not a distraction at all. Half of Effort's face is no good, right? I mean, in fact, the funny thing is, people had such a problem with Effort's face that he got paid less money. Kespa and sponsorship teams like CJ Entes, you guys suck. Because Effort's freaking awesome, and he should pay paid hugely for that. Okay, so look at this 9-pull build coming out versus Protoss, and the map says Benzene. That says Benzene, and we're just going to imagine here. Yeah, nice dual cast, right. Welcome, of course, Storku. You know, are you feeling okay? Like me, as a Bisu fan, we are we are completely devastated with how terrible the round of 8 went for our respective favorite players. I mean, as much as Bisu got slaughtered by C, Jaedong, like, next level slaughtered Stork also. So 2 very disappointing best of 5s in regards to what we would say. Yeah, so, you know, the 9-pull here, the hatchery going to be following up here, obviously, and the Overlord finally popping out here too. But Lings, It's going to be Lings immediately, now that the Overlord has been built, because you want to take those first 6 Zerglings, and it's a 2-player map. If Movie hasn't been preparing appropriately, actually, Movie may fall into the trap here too. You may assume, as a Zerg opponent, that Movie typically goes Gateway first. So if he doesn't Forge Expand, he is going to be very weak. What he did do is he did send that probe out. The probe did scout out the fact that this is a 9-pole build, and I'm sure that he is trying to get as safe as possible as the Zerglings try to make it across the map. This isn't 9-pole speed, remember, so it's 6 slow Zerglings, and an effort will be operating at an economic disadvantage if he doesn't get anything done. So this is the risk of going for 9-pole instead of overpole, where you could actually, you know, just kind of You get a little bit of better economy, the faster Overlord, and look at this, the Forge is already up, a cannon behind it, the Probe's in a really good spot here too. The Lings are not going to get in. And, you know, one cheeky thing that you can do, if you really want to risk it, is bring that Overlord in, that's the Scout, and let it aggro the cannon. And if it aggroes the cannon, then you can start attacking with your Zerglings and try and pick off a few probes and then run through the hole to get inside of your opponent's base. But you don't always want to take that risk. It's not good to lose an Overlord early on. Although I think that you could bring the Overlord in, take 2 hits, and then bring it back and still be able to make some shockwaves against the Protoss force. But right now, a quick follow-up with a 3rd hatchery going to be really important. He knows because Movie's been forced to turtle up. He dropped down a cannon. He had probes off the mineral line for a little while. That he can get this 3rd expansion and work on his economy. And just focus on droning up. As long as he doesn't misread Movie. As long as Movie doesn't suddenly push out with 6 Zealots right now. Which can be a risk also. And I actually disagree with the fact that there isn't a Zergling outside the natural base of Movie right now. Because Effort is missing out on that information. Instead, he's really just trying to make sure that he gets this probe killed off. And the probe somehow continue to live. But there goes. The information is squashed. Movie's in the dark for just a short period of time. The Overlord gets inside of the main base too, so Effort is able to check in on the Stargate tech. Wants to make sure that there's either one set of Corsairs coming out, or is there going to be double Stargate? Is it going to be, you know, +1 early on, so +1 attack for the Corsairs? You always have to just try and keep an eye on that. Take away the overlays on the sides, please. Is it a distraction? I mean, we don't really see a lot. Hold on, let me pause here. Would you like the chat overlay taken away here? Because it's just kind of a distraction, or do you want just more space in general on this cast? Maybe we could do either. Let's see here. Well, I like to keep you guys happy here. Let's get rid of aspect ratio. We could do something like expand this so it shows a little bit more. You see, but it starts to look not so good, which is why I keep it low. Just so you know that when it gets bigger, it starts to look a little bit messier. And that's one of the reasons why I don't stretch it out and keep it under the aspect ratio here. I will expand it more for replays, like if I have an actual replay that I'm watching and not a YouTube video. But what we can do here is just recapture this right here. Yes, and so we'll get rid of this one. Let's see, that's the proper one. We'll bring this one in, so at least you get more of your StarCraft viewing. And then, let me go ahead and lock this in place. Look at this. Real-time positioning. Pop me up on front. There. And it does hide half the minimap and everything above its... Okay, so you can see the minimap. Everything looks good here. Let's continue from this point, so that way you guys can see. Thank you for your feedback. I do appreciate it. Okay, so we're back to a point where I said if there's a timing where movie moves out with 6 zealots, that's where he could actually cause a lot of fuss for effort. And these 2 zealots here, I guess yeah, okay, so we're seeing a 3rd zealot coming here, and movie's just pushing out without any speed, and he's pushing out without +1 attack on his zealots. Now remember, that was actually a problem for Stork versus Jaedong, where Stork pushed out before he got his +1, and the Zealots were not as effective against the Zerglings. But right now, I think that effort's taking a bad engagement. He should have let those Zealots move away from the wall so they could actually get behind the Zealots and engage them better. And who cares? There's nothing wrong with being patient and letting the Zealots move away, but the effort decided it was better to just catch them all as a clump. And even though the Zerglings won't trade as effectively, it's better to know that you just got them caught and that eventually they will die. And this has been a constant problem here too, that a Zealot is just running over to cause some issues at this mineral line at the 3rd base. What effort needs to keep in mind, and he may have almost overreacted with how far he pulled his drones, but he's got his drones alive, and he's dropping down a sunken to a maybe. There's that a sunken right next to the base, an Evo chamber there too, trying to set up the Sim City here. But all those Zealots have been killed off. So there's about 6 or 7 Zealots that won't be able to defend if this is a 5 or 6 hatch Hydra timing. And I think that's pretty significant. It puts a lot more risk on the Protoss player because they have to defend more heavily relying on either good storms or being able to snipe overlords so DTs can be effective on the defensive end too. And you just... It all depends, I guess, on if the Protoss player did go Corsair heavy. We can already see that effort to do a great job building a lot of Scourge here. You know, and generally you send your 2 initial Scourge to go scout your opponent and see everything that they went for. But the funny thing here is that the initial Scourge that effort came out with actually spawned right next to a Corsair. So they went for the Corsair kill first and delayed the scouting. I would love to see. Okay, so the Scourge are inside that main base. We can see that it's just one Stargate tech so far. This is tough. This is tough because 3 Zealots getting in there with speed, and actually, yeah. So inside that natural base, and of course. Wow, the 4 Zealots now inside that natural base. So this is a lot for effort to deal with, and he's got to close in on these units very quickly. Of course, with the speed, I believe they have +1, but it's not often that effort's just going to click on a Zealot to show me here. But this is really a lot of good harassment that's been coming from movie. And after this, the follow-up is more Zealots that head towards the 3rd. The effort knows this. His drone count is really low, though, and you want to get greedy for a minute to actually get your drone count to at least 1 drone per mineral patch at each of your 3 bases. And so you want to be floating at least around 8 drones, I would say, at these expansions, at the natural base, at the 3rd base, and it seems like he's just below that mark because of these run-bys with these Zealots, and he's just only now being able to saturate even more heavily. Okay, so with that being said, the Hydralisks are the obvious follow-up. The Evo chamber has been dropped down. The Overlords need, or the Hydralisks need to get their speed and range upgrade. The Scourge have helped out and been pretty effective in reducing the Corsair count, so that is no longer a major threat. And DTs, you can assume that aren't going to be a major threat either because all the Overlords are alive and in really good positions too. This is tough for effort because he wants to go for that 4th base. And he's not going to be able to take it, and 4th base with that extra gas actually takes him into the late game. But because he doesn't have that 4th base, he needs to start at least making waves and make sure that he's denying Movie's ability to take a 3rd. There haven't been a lot of Hydras pressuring that natural base, and I wouldn't be surprised if amongst all this harassment that we've seen from Movie, that he's been able to actually start working towards securing a 3rd at that mineral-only location. We're going to see as the Hydralisks almost make it over towards that 3rd base location. They're now chasing Zealots because just a lead Legion of Zealots has pushed out, and just with the slimmer of vision on the minimap, Effort has been able to identify this and wants to engage appropriately. But this is tough. This is really tough. With speed on these Zealots, these Hydras aren't going to make good trades. The melee damage is just too strong here. And this is actually a reasonable force of Corsairs that has been added up. And the Hydras were out of position, so a couple of roaming Overlords getting picked off for movie has been really good here too. But Effort has to focus on getting that fourth base, getting a third gas. Getting a third gas will allow Effort to go towards Hive Tech. If you don't have that, then you've just got to float on a pretty mediocre army, or maybe start focusing on lurkers instead. Now, I've done this math here, and I think that Zerg is always in a really good position if you have around 40 Hydralisks. If you can keep your unit count of 40 Hydralisks or higher, you're going to be able to combat well against a Protoss player. But it obviously requires you to still micro well, play effectively, and re-up that count to 40 as quickly as possible. But I think that Protoss can't do much. If you know, that is the key number, 40 Hydralisks. I've been watching a lot of 0 ZVP, and that's where that number comes from. That's what makes me think that you have to have that specific number or higher for you to play well. And so it's just been one of those consistent things. But Lurkers needs to be the follow-up, and unless there is some other Hive Tech that Effort wants to go for instead of going for Lair Tech Lurkers, because Hydras, they don't have great HP, and once you start to lay out Lurkers, they're not only better in terms of HP, but their visibility makes them tougher to defeat once they're underground, and their nice long range allows them to effectively kill off more units. So adding in, let's say, 6 Lurkers right now would really help Effort out. But instead, he's just sticking really with that strong Hydralisk army right now and trying to use his mobility to really control the board. He's allowed Movie to take that third base, though. And now that Movie has this third base, and Effort knows that he's going to start working towards that mid-game core army that is really strong and hard to go up against. What have we seen? Only 2 to 3 storms that have been burned entirely from these High Templar. And unless we see a Muta switch from Effort at this point, which is why he's skipping Lurkers. He's got to be gaining a lot of gas. Because, and this has got to be the timing for the Muta switch. Because there's too many High Templar right now, and the High Templar have to be reduced at some point, and there's a better way to effectively reduce storms than to just bait them out, then come in there and snipe off a lot of them very quickly. It takes a lot of really good army control, especially if you don't have a lot of Dragoons out for a Protoss player to combat against the Mutas. You can see that a few Corsairs are out, but it hasn't been completely pesky. It's been just kind of the standard amount of harassment that you could expect. And when you incur only just the slightest amount of damage in terms of Overlord deaths, yeah, as a Zerg player, not entirely upset with the Corsair damage. So, like I've been saying, we've got plus 40 Hydralisk, almost more than a control group now of Mutalisks that are out. And it's important that Effort can start to track down the army and pick off the High Templar. But really all we're seeing is Zealots. A lot of Hydralisks are moving around, but we aren't seeing anything else with Movie's army. So he's got to be keeping them at home. Oh, there's the first storm that comes out. Really important. In fact, if you're good, if you're almost J-Dog level, you can actually clump up 2 different groups of Mutas. So that way, if you do get hit momentarily with storms, you're not taking as much damage. So while the High Templar was taken out, did you see how many cannons there were at that third base location? A lot of damage was taken on those Mutas, and I would say that Effort didn't make a really good trade at this point. So that's going to be pretty frustrating for him, despite the fact that he still has a pretty high army count. He's not doing anything well in reducing the army count that Movie has. Look at this, more Zealots getting inside here too. Now they've got to be getting ferried in. That's the only way. So I would imagine if Effort can spare it, he should put a post up to Scourge that patrol back and forth around that main base. You see a lot of Zerg players that do that well, is they do manage to get Scourge in the right spot here to hunt down that shuttle, because you don't want that shuttle to continue to harass you and get units, and especially when it could be a much more deadly series of units of Dark Templar or High Templar. That can harass you and kill off your workers way quicker than any amount of zealots. Okay, so Effort is super focused right now. He's got at least 3 hatcheries per base. The Hydralisk upgrades, I'm assuming he's either floating at 1-1 or 2-1. In that regard, he's doing well too. Look at those sacrificial storms that have to get thrown down. As soon as it goes into an Archon, it's not the best unit to focus down. He's got better units that he can start to head towards. And these Corsairs respond very quickly too. So again, Effort's got to be very, very frustrated with the fact that his mutas have come out. He's wasted 12 to 1300 gas on Mutalisks that have only really killed about 300 to 400 gas worth of High Templars. So that trade isn't really there. And imagine that he had 12 larvae that he had to spend on mutas besides that too. So the investment doesn't have a good return. Despite the fact that Effort can still at least compete in this game because he's floating on 4 bases. He really wants to actually have a 5th base, because having 4 gases is extremely important too. So either taking the 6 or the 12 o'clock at some point would be really nice here too. So this is just a huge, massive attack of Hydralisk coming in here with these Overlords. And it looks like there's this potential for him to tear down this 3rd base because he's macroed up the Hydralisk so well. As you can see, that the storms are dwindling him down. He may be taking huge hits here too. But I think that because of the amount of hatcheries that he has, Effort's actually in still too good of a position for Movie to be able to take a huge advantage here. So here comes another 1 to 2 control groups of units heading towards the north side. Not only is that 3rd base in danger, but the 4th base is in danger too now. And Movie, where is his army? Because you can see that there are no bases that are being attacked by Effort. He's completely had the turtle himself up now. And Hydralisk kill off these glass photon cannons so quickly. I think he's actually going to get both next side too. Oh, what an incredible game that we're seeing here by him. And GG for Movie. And that's going to be it. It's that sweet spot, guys. It's that sweet spot. I think after you get 3 bases. Look at that. I've just kind of clicked over to... let's get something neutral here. So... And once you get to 3 bases, you can get the 5 to 6 hatcheries. You can get the proper upgrades for your Hydralisk to make them with the range and speed. As long as you keep it above 40, you might end up just winning the game by sheer numbers. It's a kind of a good low level number to keep in mind. Benzene, obviously, kind of a tough map for Protoss players to get a third base on, but I think that it's been Protoss favored in terms of statistics and ASL wins, although I don't necessarily think that it is Protoss favored. But of course, you would say at the highest level the numbers don't lie, and it's unfortunate. But Zergs are starting to figure it out and play a little bit better here, as you can see. Effort taking a pretty nice monster win off of Movie. Okay, so that's going to be it. Blindwire coming in late. Thank you for joining in, though, for the last bit of that cast. I did a pretty good, just to recap, I did an analysis of TVP with Light, and we only watched from Light's first-person view, and there was a breakdown of that against his opponent minus Candy. We got to see Best play a pretty good game against sSak on Benzene, the PVT. We watched that from the Protoss point of view, and then we see the Zerg point of view versus Protoss here with Effort versus Movie. Guys, remember, Fight Club is in 2 weeks. It's going to be coming up on the 31st. I'm so excited about it. Lots of great things are coming forward between Korean StarCraft and foreign StarCraft. So if you guys enjoy this channel and want to donate towards more StarCraft tournaments, there is a link below. Put in a reason for it if you want. But other than that, guys, thank you for the weekly Dagger. I'll be back next Thursday. Watch me on Sunday, please. Show support on Sunday also when I cast the Best versus C games. Everybody take care, and here's some outro music.